Recorded live from the mats of Radical MMA in New York City, the Martial Culture Podcast. Your source for in-depth combat sports and martial arts insights with Coach Renee Dreyfus and Matt Peters. Ring the bell and let's get it on.
I'm Rusty. Oh, I pressed the button too soon. I'm Rusty. Hi, I'm actually Matt Peters, not Rusty.
Name changes are fine.
I'm going through a phase right now. Welcome back to the Martial Culture Podcast. It's been on a little bit of hiatus as things were in flux during the month of December, but the audience have spoken, and we're back. So, Renee,
it's all Matt's fault.
It's somebody's fault. I don't know if it's mine, but we can throw the blame on me. I'll take it. But yeah, I'm glad to be back. I definitely missed our conversations, and I had to make my own puns into the mirror, and they were not solid.
I've got a few raring to go.
Ready to go.
But yeah, no, it's a shame we unfortunately lost our space. And no, but it's great to be back. We have a new space now, and it's even better. So sometimes change is good. Change is a spur to improvement. And It just seems like that's exactly what happened.
We only did like 2 episodes in the new space. Then we had to move to a whole new spot. But, like you said, change can be good.
Definitely much more spacious.
We're making moves. We can get a whole bunch of more people in here. We'll fill these mics up with people that are far more intelligent than I to have more in-depth analysis of martial arts and all those cool things. But obviously the UFC event last night, and there's probably been a lot of things that we missed over the last month that we need to catch up on. This episode is going to be a little bit of catch up, but we can start with the UFC fight that last night that I unfortunately didn't watch. I saw some of the highlights this morning. I'm old, so I went to sleep. But I was definitely rooting for Stipe.
Why? You were rooting for Stipe, and then you were rooting against Daniel Cormier?
Yes.
Why?
I don't like him.
Why not?
Personally, I just do not like the guy.
He's such a Boy Scout.
Boy Scout. He's a nice guy in that he keeps his nose clean. He doesn't do drugs. He doesn't get in trouble. But he just has this jerk quality that I see.
You know what? I don't know him personally, but let me tell you what happened last night. We can go through the fights, and one thing that impressed me, and this goes about martial arts, and my theory is a lot larger idea of what martial arts is martial arts was developed for altruistic purposes. I always said that you're developed to protect your loved ones, your family. So teams, we look at martial arts, and we don't see it as a team sport. We see the individual. Mm-hmm. One guy gets in the ring, he fights, he gets all the glory. But I made this announcement to my guys in my academy recently. Is that this martial arts is not a team sport. I'm not an individual sport. It's a team sport, because you are the sum of the work that your training partners gave to you. You need your friends. You need your teammates. You need your training partners. You have to be a good member of the team and selfless, because your fight's going to come up, but then sometime in the future, you're going to have to help your friend and pay it back, and always be a giving, selfless person. And everything I've heard about Daniel Cormier, one, he's the captain of their squad at AKA, but everything I've heard of him is he is such a team player and such a great member of the academy. He's always like the last guy out of the academy, helping people get better. And yesterday, after he won, his big moment, he really, did a virtuoso performance in terms of, one-sided victory. What does he do? And it's been very emotional, because obviously he wasn't the winner, and then he was, because John Jones was stripped and blah, blah, blah. It's an extremely emotional ride for him. The first thing he does after he says it was a great, thing, he starts talking about his teammates. Khabib, he's like, Khabib will be the next champion. And then he talks about Cain Velasquez, and he talks about his AKA. And he's not a narcissist. Mm. And a lot of fighters, they have this toxic narcissism, and they're me, and they can be very selfish people. And I was extremely moved that in his moment of the limelight, in the moments where he has really captured the title, what does he do? He doesn't think of himself. He thinks of his training partners, his team, and he really is like, you guys, Khabib is going to be here next and winning, and then Cain Velasquez and this. And I happened to see an interview this morning on Fox Sports that he gave, and it was the same thing. He was really talking about his team, and it wasn't about me. Mm-hmm. And that impressed me. And maybe you see a side of him that I don't see. Obviously, we see different things and we mirror different aspects of other people. So I'm not discounting what you say, but I was very impressed with him. Personally, I don't like his fighting style in some ways, technically, but as a person, I never found him to be off-putting.
You make good points, and if I'm not,
thank you. You're the only one who thinks so.
If I'm not going to be unwavering, I have to be willing to change my opinions, and I think I'm looking through it through John Jones' lens, and I was a big supporter of John Jones, and I even still am a big supporter of John Jones, and I am on his side. I mean, I can't defend all of his actions or a majority of his actions. And
hitting a woman who's pregnant and driving away, not
We've
a
all
big
been
deal.
there, right?
Yeah, of course.
But, I'm from Rochester, and John Jones from Rochester, so hometown pride kind of stuff.
Oh, that's right. He used to train up there in an academy called, I
should know this.
it was not Proving Grounds. I forgot what it was called, but there's an academy up there that he got started in, and it's right in your neck of the woods.
Yeah, so... Yeah, I don't know.
Bomb Squad.
I don't know Cormier on a personal level. He's a great athlete, fantastic wrestler. So I think maybe I'm wrong, and I'm willing to admit that. But I don't feel like he deserves the title. As far as
now, that is a different story. That is a totally different subject. I get exactly what you're saying, and we can talk about the fight. Excuse me, I'm just eating a bagel. Sorry, guys. After watching his fight, and definitely he had a dominant performance, but he had a terrible start. And he's striking, while effective, is not efficient. There's significant problems in the way he moves. And I'd like to talk about that in detail. And that brings me to the fact that I don't think he'll ever beat John Jones. If John Jones trains. Obviously, John Jones came into the Gustafsson fight, as I understand. He didn't even do 1 day of hard training. That's insane. So obviously he has these kind of self-destructive qualities. But John Jones's movement, the efficiency of his movement and striking, the efficiency of his transitions are light years ahead of Cormier. And that is a fact. John Jones, if he fought Cormier right now, probably even walking off I would say bar stool, but bender, a cocaine table. It's still probably he would beat him, which is, I hate to say, because obviously Cormier is a hard worker, but there's just certain fundamental flaws in the way he moves. And, everybody made fun of Conor McGregor about how he hired the movement coach. I forgot the movement coach's name, but have you ever seen that? Like Conor McGregor's movement coach?
I think so.
These kind of weird, kind of like people were making fun of him, saying, "Oh, it's playing touch butt," because they do these weird movements that look like a cross between yoga, ballet, and gymnastics. But there's a significant of research saying that these movement oriented systems. Training systems, and this goes back actually to the Gracies too. They help you develop a much higher level of proprioception, which is a sense of your body in space. Basically, when you close your eyes, you're going to have a map of where your body is in space, and the more refined that map is, the better you can move as an athlete. I want to put my foot at 45 degrees north. And boom, it goes right there. That's kind of what we say when we mean a person's a good athlete. Now, there are people like who are good athletes who can run fast, or especially in certain sports, they have very specific things like football. They are very strong, but the real judge of across the board, whatever sport you're playing, whether it's basketball, baseball, football, is proprioceptive ability, your control of your body in space.
Is that why they kind of encourage athletes to do ballet and things like that?
Absolutely, and cross training. And this is totally not due to MMA, but I researched this a lot, and it's very interesting because there are a lot of sports fathers who they want their kids to be champions in boxing or MMA, and the first thing they do is when they're 4 years old, they start them in boxing. And the Soviets, who were really studied athletic performance, athletic development, did not do this. It's really interesting, the Soviet athlete protocols. So yes, they would divide people up into certain, so like, okay, you're going to be a gymnast, you're going to be hockey player. You're going to be this. But instead of, and I'm familiar with the Sambo tradition, which is the Soviet Union's martial art, which is a grappling-based martial art, but does include some striking, submissions, all sorts of stuff, right? Basically MMA, like a proto-MMA, and it's a very great martial art that Khabib studied, and it was developed for the Soviet Union military forces, but it became a sport. And most of those Sambo guys would go in to compete in judo, because judo was obviously a worldwide sport where Sambo was not. So how did they develop them? They would segue them into wrestling and Sambo and this kind of thing. And they would teach them some things, but really what they would do is teach them movement, particularly gymnastics. So you'd start at 5 or 6 or 7, and yeah, you do some martial art movement or whatever it is you're doing, but really what you're doing is gymnastics and learning how to have your body. And there's a lot of physical sports research going on now that, if you want your kid to be a successful athlete, instead of starting them up in baseball and little league, you should start them up in movement and clean their movement up. And later on, when they have a high level of proprioception, you can sort of jack that into whatever sport they play. Mm-hmm. When you start them too early in sports, they develop, they adapt too much to that, and they develop chronic stress injuries or things like that, burnout, things like that, and they don't necessarily excel. And a really good example of that with this was not a program, but if you look at you remember the movie Foxtrot?
Yeah.
With the wrestler who was killed and...
Is that Foxcatcher?
Foxcatcher, I'm sorry. Foxcatcher.
You're thinking dancing.
Yeah, dancing, Foxtrot. We were talking about movement drills, so...
Yeah.
It's Mark and Dave Schultz, and one of them was killed, but the successful one, the one still alive, he said, when did he start wrestling? He started much, much later than his brother. His brother started, and then I think he said he even started in his early teenage years. But what did he do as a kid? He was a gymnast, and actually he actually done some traditional karate too. But the karate he did is, I believe, a little bit much more traditional with katas and forms and things like that. But really gymnastics, and that gives you that foundation. And he said within a year, and his brother had been wrestling for many, many years, but he said within a year he not only caught up to his brother, but he was almost superseding him. So his brother had been wrestling for 7 years. He had not. He'd been doing gymnastics. A year of wrestling training with his brother, and he's actually on the same par. And then they wrestled together head to head. And he, the one who started in gymnastics, was generally considered the better wrestler. So that's very interesting. Movement is key. And when Daniel Cormier, getting back to him, moves in striking, he's not just awkward. If you see the beginning of the fight, he's tipping over to the side, losing his balance, entering in funky ways, and just doing things with his body that are not efficient and effective. And John Jones never really does that. Once in a while, because nobody's perfect, but generally speaking, he's very clean. And Cormier is not. But Cormier has power, he has speed, explosiveness, and he's overcoming. And then when he's in trouble, he grapples you. And that's exactly what he did. He, took a little shot in the beginning, took Ozdemir down, and then just brutalized him, and so it was a great fight. But overall, it was a really good card. The other thing that was interesting about that fight, and even though it was a kind of a terrible start for Cormier, and he got clipped a little bit, it's a typical, grappler versus striker matchup, and the minute you saw Volkan Ozdemir. Yeah, I don't know exactly how to pronounce his name. I apologize if he's listening. The minute he took them down, you had that level of smash. Just it was like taking a beetle and turning it on the back, and he can't move. And the Jean-Jacques Machado has a great quote, and he said, "When you're on the ground, you're in the ocean, and you don't know how to swim, but I'm a great white shark." And that's true. That's what it was like. It was like a shark, or in this case, Cormier eats a little too much Popeye, so maybe like a sea lion, an orca. Oh. No, don't get mad, John. Oh. No, but he, the thing with his Popeye's chicken. Yeah. No, but he was on top of him, and literally, it was like somebody took crazy glue to Ozdemir and pasted him to the mat. He just couldn't move. And then he was put in the crucifix position, top crucifix, which is a brutal position. His hands were tied up, and Cormier just laid a beat down. I mean, he really just wrecked him. And then that was it. It was a very easy win for him, except for that poor start. And definitely Ozdemir is the better striker. So in the stand up, if it'd been a kickboxing match, Ozdemir would have killed him. Just killed him. But anyway, so that's my thought on that fight. It was an interesting fight. I think before we came on, you were talking about that you didn't think Ozdemir had deserved kind of the title shot, and they even Joe Rogan asked him about that. He's like, because there was some speculation that he was not the best opponent. But I believe there's a number of people in that division who are out of commission or injured.
It's a tough weight class.
Yeah,
There's not much competition, at least for Cormier.
Right. And I think it was a specific time where there was it Joe Silva, the promoter, I'd heard had trouble matching other people. But Ozdemir had a number of wins, but you're right, he was not ready for that level. If you go into a championship match and you do not know how to grapple well, you're going to be in trouble.
Yeah. Has he ever fought at that level before, Ozdemir? Has he ever gone 5 rounds? I don't even know in his career.
I don't know his entire record. I know the UFC mostly he's not, but he's been very dominant. He's done well, and he comes from a good camp. He comes from the camp that split off from the Black Zillions. The Black Zillions was a team in Florida, right? And they split off, and it's Henry Hooft, who is an amazing Dutch Muay Thai instructor, and he has his camp called Combat Club, and Hooft Combat Club or Combat Club, and he's got Dorino, Gilberto Burns, he's got
Stefan Struve, I think.
Stefan Struve, and also I believe Luke Rockhold.
I saw on the videos they had Luke Rockhold and this guy training together.
Yeah, I don't know if he's there permanently or
Yeah.
if he left AKA.
Yeah.
But sometimes you want different looks, you want to travel.
Yeah.
In ancient Japan, when there were tournaments, to be a good swordsman, to be a good warrior, you'd have to do Dageiko. And Dageiko would mean you train outside of your own academy. You train, you go on a road trip and go from school to school. And obviously the most famous one is Miyamoto Musashi, who would go around and he was a swordsman who challenged people. But the tradition of that is very common. Even if you go to the Kyokushin karate in the 1950s, they would go to Thailand. They went all around to other schools challenging people. And I mean, sometimes it's respectful challenge, sometimes it's not. But you have to travel to other places to get different looks. Otherwise, you can stagnate. And I don't know if IK is obviously a great academy, but you want different looks. You want different people to work with, and I totally understand why Luke is going there. So also a lot more people his size. AKA the sizes tend to be a little bit more on the heavyweight side, and so a little more people his size.
Yeah, and they probably encourage him to go out there and actually find more, test yourself against other people.
Yeah, I don't know. There's a money element there, obviously. So most coaches and promoters, or even martial arts school owners, can get very territorial. Right. And and I'll be honest. Some people have even accused me of that, which I have no problem with. But I do. This is the issue. I do have a problem if you're supposed to be in team training on Saturday, and you decide to go somewhere else, and your teammates need you. But generally speaking, I will never discourage my students from training somewhere else. But if our guys are getting ready for a competition, everybody's got to band together and help each other. And if you're not there, then you're kind of selfish.
Need some loyalty as well.
Yeah, right. It goes both ways. But that being said, I always encourage my students to, if they're traveling or every now and again, just drop by another academy and just get a roll in here and there. I have some friends in the New York area. My old teacher, Marcelo Garcia, has his own academy, and I used to train with Fabio Clemente, who has his own academy, and my student Chad and a few others have gone to those academies for a couple of days here and there, and just got some work in, and it's all friendly and nice. And those are two amazing jiu-jitsu academies. So not MMA, but they're amazing jiu-jitsu academies with amazing guys and nothing but positivity. And there were a number of guys from from Marcelo's Academy who drop by mine when they want to do a little bit more MMA style training. We're all great friends. We're all in the martial art world together. But that being said, the martial art world at the amateur level and then the pro level, when you're dealing with percentages and, contracts, and I don't know how that works. I think the territorial aspect, when money is involved, it can be a dirty business. Yeah. So who knows?
Interesting.
Yeah.
Something just popped in my head. I know we were talking a little earlier about GSP and Bisping, and we didn't get a chance to talk about Bisping's next fight that he lost. That fight, I think when I looked at that fight, and kind of the same kind of a feeling I had with the Cormier fight, that it was a confidence-boosting fight, because Bisping just came off a big loss to GSP. He was looking to feel good about himself, to go in there and get an easy W. Did you see that fight? And it felt like it was going to be an easy one for him, but it was not an easy fight for him. Can he come back from that? I mean, he's still pretty youngish in the fighting game. So when will he be back, and will he be the same Bisping? Because his confidence has got to be low, losing twice in a row.
All right, you know how you don't like Daniel Cormier? Well, I don't like Bisping. So
you don't care.
No. This is the thing. I have tremendous respect for Bisping. He is a hard worker.
He plays an act. I think a majority of his thing, just like Conor McGregor, they're trying to play to the crowd.
No,
but you think that he's still got in there?
No, he's got that
okay.
that British, chav, that attitude-y kind of, I'm a. I don't know.
There's blurred lines between the persona and the real guy.
But putting that aside, I don't mean a personal level, because I'm really looking just technically here. Because personality, of course, he kind of annoys me. But I really respect that. The guy's been in the game for like 20 years or something, and he made it to the title. But again, objectively speaking, I just did not think he was a powerful champion. I mean, he fought Dan Henderson, who's like, basically has one punch and nothing else. His body's so broken. Respect to Dan Henderson, but he's over the hill. And Bisping almost lost that fight.
Yeah.
You remember he got clipped by Dan Henderson and he almost got knocked out, and then he wound up winning. But you're dealing with a guy with one weapon and in his 40s who's broken everywhere, and you can't put him away. It's like, that being said, I respect Bisping for his hard work. Because when he first came out, he was a good striker, but that's all he had. He had no grappling. Now he's a very accomplished grappler. That level of hard work is great, but I never thought that he was really that good. He maxed out his potential with hard work. He's like the anti-John Jones. Less talent, more hard work. But he was always B level to me, not A. And he was lucky that he got some lucky breaks. Rockhold was just totally arrogant and just dropped his hands, and he got some lucky breaks, and he made his champion. But obviously, success can be a combination of hard work and luck, and he did it. But I just never felt that he was so technically domineering, like someone like John Jones or even Daniel Cormier, who, like I said, he has problems with the striking, but Daniel Cormier can pick you up and put you in the stratosphere anytime he wants, and that level of dominance. I just didn't see it from Bisping. Bisping's a striker with not a lot of power. He doesn't. He also, his eye is damaged. You know that, right? He can't see out of his eye well, and he's getting old, and he doesn't have that much of a chin left. So, time to think about your future. And so I was not surprised he lost it. I give him credit for being a warrior, for stepping up in such short notice, so quickly. But that's not so smart either.
No.
I had a friend. I won't say his name because I know it's something he listened to the podcast. But he's like, you want to fight? You fight? Yes, I fight tomorrow. Fight. Good. Fight next week. Fight. Yeah, I always fight. And he would never turn down a fight. And so his MMA record is not what it should be, because he's like, I fight tomorrow. Good, I fight. I'm a fighter. And I respect that warrior attitude, but you're dealing with a guy who's trained for 6 months or 3 years getting ready, and you're like, get out of bed. Okay, I fight tonight.
Right.
You're not going to be at your best. And it's going to be hard, especially, with the George St. Pierre fight. It was a war. It was a war. And he had some damage and probably didn't recover from it. So I think his manager should have stepped in and said, why don't you take the mandated 6 months?
So fast? Why are you so chomping at the bit?
No, I think that's exactly it. He was chomping the bit. He wanted to win. Because he wanted to get back on the horse, and reclaim his title. And sometimes fighters are their own worst enemies because they don't know when to quit or they don't know when to do, myself included. I made some very, very poor decisions in accepting certain fights, and it could have been extremely, extremely dangerous for me. And even one fight, one fight that I lost, I had actually broken my ribs and been injured in my knee. I had two cracked ribs and a really badly injured knee, and then that stopped me from managing my weight properly. So I went overweight. So I starved myself. I went into the fight with two broken ribs and a messed up knee and a weight cut that was terrible. In the dressing room, I was panting before the fight because I couldn't breathe. I was panting before the fight, and of course I fought. Not taking away from the person who beat me, who was an amazing warrior, went to the UFC, fantastic guy. On my best day, it would have been an incredible challenge to face someone like him. But that was actually one of my worst days, and I wish I could have, win, lose, or draw, had someone say to me, "Look, you are not in shape to fight." But the reason I did that was because I had gotten injured before and canceled one fight, and then I'm like, I don't want people to think I'm like, and that wouldn't be such a nice word to say, but you're such a loser, such a wimp, and I don't want them to think that I don't cancel fights. I'm going to fight, And somebody should have sat down and said, "Stop being an idiot. Fight when you're healthy."
Yeah.
So you're as fighters, your own worst enemy. And I even though I'm not a big Vising fan, I understand that feeling. You lost, you want to get back in. He should have taken the mandated for his general health going forward, and take the mandated, recommended rest period.
I bet there was somebody on his team that told him no, and I could see his personality being like, "Fuck you, I'm doing it." Exactly
right. And I heard he's like his own. Like he's not one of those fighters that's in a camp, and it's the AKA is a camp of like sort of Jackson Wink. Bisping is Bisping, and he just does his thing, and so you can't really tell a guy like that what to do, which is fine.
Yeah.
I mean, he has a right to do whatever he wants, but you're going to suffer the consequences if you take a fight 3 weeks after a devastating loss.
I wonder how long it'll be before we see him again. Is he going to take the time to recuperate, or is he going to just focus on being a media person and just being a host of stuff?
I don't know. I've seen him on TV a few times. I have to say that he is very good on camera.
His podcast is good?
Oh, I've never listened to it. I did not know he had a podcast. Yeah. What is it called?
I have no idea what it's called.
How to Be a Jerky Englishman?
Oh boy. Send all of your complaints to Renee. I'm not sure what the name of it is. But so, in the same vein, if Cormier had lost this fight, is that the end of Cormier? Because he's coming off two big losses. No, because it's two losses to the same person. Yeah.
So
that's demoralizing.
Yeah, but it's
his second loss. He was crying.
But you're losing to the best guy in the world who. Yeah, right. Exactly. It's not like but Cormier is the product of a world class room, and what I mean by room is a world class wrestling room. Yeah. And while there's a lot of things in the wrestling world that are unhealthy, like we're actually going to talk about in a new podcast is weight cutting and nutrition. And the rivalry in the room, because there's one spot at 185 or 175 or 205 or whatever weight class, there's one spot and there's like 10 guys that want it. And while there's teamwork, they're your opponents too. Mm-hmm. The intensity of a world-class wrestling room is almost unmatched in any martial art. And, for colleges, even though it's an amateur sport, it's also big business. So it's like you're going to say like college basketball is amateur. Well, yeah, not really. College football, there's nothing amateur about it. Right. These are gladiators. And when you get through that room, those kind of rooms, and you are successful at the world stage, you have iron in your veins. And I don't think anybody can break Cormier. They can beat him, but I don't think they can break him. He's just mentally, he and Khabib have it. These guys that went through these rooms that were just day in, day out slog. Mm-hmm. There's a strength that cannot be broken in competition. They've gone through, and then the same with Ronda Rousey. Now Ronda Rousey got knocked out, but she wasn't broken. She didn't like she was there to fight, and the same thing with Judah. Obviously, her striking was terrible, and that's it. But the woman has heart. The same thing could be said about Cain Velasquez, who was perennially injured, but the man has no quit. You'll never see them like, oh, he tapped out early or something like that. The guy's going to go, as the Spartans say, come back on your with your shield or on it. Yeah, this is going to come back on their shield. They're. I don't think Cormier, barring injuries, will be retiring for some time. But barring injuries, but he does. AK is riddled with injuries, so you never know.
So do you see Cormier fighting until he?
I think he's going to wait till John Jones back. That's his dream. His dream is John Jones comes back. I'm going to fight him.
4 years, right? Minimum.
As I heard,
and then if he doesn't go to Japan, then he's done forever.
Right. As I heard, they're in discussions about, that it was some sort of tainted supplement, and it might be shorter. I don't follow the drama here and there, so I don't know. Actually, I'll be honest with you. It was a student in my academy who mentioned it to me. I didn't research it, but he's such a draw. I could also see a little shenanigans to bring him back. But, you know, if he came back if he started fighting in Japan, you know what I think Cormier would do?
Go to Japan.
He'd go to Japan and fight him. That's the kind of thing.
He wants to chase him,
That's the kind of thing. And I exactly right.
I saw.
And then he'd lose.
On Joe Rogan's podcast, they had somebody from USADA on talking about
really?
John Jones thing. It's a good one to check out.
Oh, yeah. I'll definitely check that out.
They definitely went in depth on what substance was being tested for and how many times they tested him and kind of the next steps. So it could be less than 4. But I think a minimum, we're looking at least 2 years. If he's because they can't make him not guilty. Like he'd had something in his system, they have to punish him somehow. Yeah,
and they did that to Ryota Machida. Machida actually reported himself.
Are you kidding me?
No, because what happened was he was on this supplement. It's not a steroid, but it's sort of, he took it as a mood enhancer. Then just calm him down, and it was not illegal. And then the rules changed. They made it illegal, but he was not aware of the rule change. Mm-hmm. And then he found out, and he said, "Look, I took this, and it wasn't it's like a DHEA or something like that. I don't know, some lower level thing. It's not a anabolic or anything like that. Obviously, it can enhance your performance to some extent, but it's not building muscle or speed. It's more like one of those mood and kind of like slow. He said he had trouble sleeping, and it would help him sleep, kind of thing." Mm-hmm. So he reported himself, and they banned him for like 2 years for nothing. So I don't know. Yeah, maybe John Jones will never come back. It's just what a waste.
We could spend an hour talking about John Jones.
Exactly. Let's not go there. Right? And more interesting things to talk about.
I'm kind of hoping that Cormier has a couple of good fights in a row, and then can retire on top.
Wow,
I'm scared of
you don't like him. You want him to go.
I'm scared of who's coming in the light heavyweight division. That there's going to be somebody that really embarrasses him. Gets a first round knockout, and then Cormier has to live that as his legacy. Like right now, he's the champ.
Yeah.
You'll defend it 2 more times and then retire.
Look, I'm not in Cormier's head, but I think the thing that would make him retire would be injuries.
He hasn't really been injured, though. He has not. Nothing serious.
I don't think they've publicized it, but I think he's had some here and there. Mm-hmm. But they don't publicize it. Mm-hmm. But and then maybe he was able to therapy it out or something like that. Mm-hmm. I believe he broke his hand too. I forgot. But anyway, and you get older though, your body starts getting weaker, and he's going to be 40 soon. So injuries and recovery time. These are serious things. So I think that's what happened. But his fight spirit seems to be undiminished, and I wouldn't see it any other way. The other thing is, and this is my personal journey, is I enjoyed competing. And I see this in Cormier. He really enjoys coaching. So maybe he just gets more joy out of coaching at one point too. And I saw the UFC behind the scenes or whatever it's called, countdown, blah, blah, blah. And there's a whole emphasis on him in the academy, running the practices, running the coaching, real team player and real enjoyment and love. Like I said, love for his team and his AK family. And that's it's kind of touching,
nice.
Yeah. CC's not a jerk.
I don't know him. I can't say.
I don't either.
So Stipe and Francis.
Yes.
I was conflicted on this fight because I think Nagano, is that how you pronounce his last name?
Yes.
He is an amazing person. from any interviews I've seen.
No,
he seems
absolutely.
like a great guy.
Yes.
He's an athlete like a motherfucker.
Wow.
Sorry for the language.
I can't have my mom listen to this podcast.
I'll bleep it out, Mom.
That's totally hypocritical because I cursed a few.
He's an amazing athlete. He's got such power. Like, he broke records.
Supposedly in the UFC Performance Institute, they did a really rigorous scientific study, and he has more punching power than any recorded human.
I think he did 151,000 psi.
Oh, Jesus Christ!
It's insane. He's a monster.
Monster.
And then I like Stipe because I watched him kind of come up and get his shot and defend it. Win the title was a huge thing, and my brother-in-law wrestled with him in college. So
no kidding.
Yeah. So I like him. The more I get to know Stipe, behind the scenes, I don't like him. I don't know. Do you watch those behind the scenes things with the UFC?
I turn it on to see the method of coaching and training, but I generally, when it comes to the blah blah blah, I mute it.
You're not into that. So I turn it up. I'm into the drama. So I don't know if he is a great. I mean, I don't want to comment on people's personal lives or anything. So let's just talk about his fighting. He's a great athlete. He's a good fighter. He's got one punch knockout power. So I was conflicted. I don't know, do I want Ngannou? Do I want Stipe? Obviously, Stipe came out on top, and I didn't see the fight, but everything I read about it said that he dominated. Yeah,
this is one of my students, Jeff Lau, asked me. He's like, "What do you think? How do you think it's going to go?" And I said, Stipe has the skills to win. However, sometimes some strikers, especially this kind of blue collary,
Midwest.
Clay Guida, not just Midwest, but the blue collar, I'm going to get in your face. I'm going to, we're going to go to war. That machismo attitude, rather than being tactical, being like, I'm going to show you who can strike hard, that kind of thing. He could go there, and I said, if he does that, he's going to die. But he didn't. He came in with the opening bell, boom, he shot in, and he shot in singles, and high C's, the head outside single, which can be problematic for a guillotine, but in this case, what really wasn't, Ngannou couldn't do anything, and he just kept clinching with him, took him down. The minute, again, classic grappler striker. You're talking one of the strongest guys on the planet. Ngannou used to work in a sand mine or a salt mine or something like that, where he was just lifting thousands of pounds of mining stuff all day.
He's a beast.
Yeah, and you're talking about personally, the guy was homeless 5 years ago. It's crazy. And it's a nice rags to riches story. It's a great guy. But he does not have the skill in the grappling and the jiu-jitsu element to even escape the most basic side control position. He was put in side control, and you could just see him almost turning color because the adrenaline dump was so immense. And then he's like, "Arr!" And this, I have people, when I have new students in the academy, I'm like, that are using too much strength, I'm like, okay, try and bench press me off. And they can't do it. Or they do it possibly, and they're just so exhausted they can't fight anymore. Okay, now you bench press me off, or you didn't? Okay, now we really fight. What do you got left? And they have nothing left. The adrenaline has exploded through their system. And then once the adrenaline wave crashes, your body is just exhausted. And you could see right after the first round, and he was out-grappled completely. I have some notes here that I want to refer to. Yeah, so he was crushed in side control. And then Stipe, he had a really interesting theory. There was this wrestling move called the power half Nelson, where you basically have your hand, you know what a Nelson is, right? With the hands underneath the arm. So you had one hand underneath his shoulder and one elbow on Ngannou's neck. So you kept pushing Ngannou's head down and you yanking his shoulder and not trying to take him down. They're against the cage. Not trying to take him down, not trying to submit him. Just make Ngannou carry Stipe's weight. And Stipe was just short punching and just laying on him and just grinding him down with weight, and the adrenaline wave has gone down. And then Ngannou, by the third round, do you know the stats? No. Here, look at the stats. I actually copied them so I could show them to you. This is amazing. Not only was it a virtuoso performance. Let me pull it up right now. So let's go through the striking stats. Where's my picture? Here it is. Okay, so here we go. So round one, it's 20 significant strikes to 17. Ngannou versus Stipe. Then it's Stipe was 20 and Nagano was 17. Round 2, 31-4, Stipe. Round 3, 54 strikes to 8. Round 4, 82 strikes to 0.
Oh my God.
Not one strike. And round 5, 21-5. Unreal.
Wow.
Unreal. I don't think there has been such a one-sided beatdown in US heavyweight
You can
history.
read those stats and you can see the fight.
You can imagine
It's
what
insane.
happened. Yeah. And Stipe was very tactical and very smart, and the use of the power half was just brilliant. And it's funny that I consider myself pretty knowledgeable in jiu-jitsu, and I know the power half, and I'm like, I don't teach that enough. We're gonna do that. And I learned it, and I used to work with a friend of mine, Gene, and was a great wrestler. He's a wrestling instructor at NYU, and he was like, I do the power half this way. And I'm like, this is really good. And we used to do it from certain positions, and now I see how he's doing a power half and just making the guy carry his weight, and he didn't. He didn't try to submit him, and this was like kind of a theme that I saw throughout all of the night of the UFC. And there's some real interesting tactical elements. But basically, we think of jiu-jitsu as like going for submissions. And there's a really interesting article that I want to talk about the rate of percentage of submissions in MMA being very high, actually. 20% of fights end in submission, 50% end in decisions. And then there's like TKO, KO, and submission. But so everybody sees, jiu-jitsu works, 20%. That's almost 50% of non-decision victories. It's almost 50, the non-decision victories or the decisions are 50%. The remaining 50%, almost 25% are submissions. So jiu-jitsu is good. No, it's even more. Because we look at jiu-jitsu as being a submission art. No, it is not. Any jiu-jitsu practitioner will tell you it's about body control. How to control another human being and offset their movement and use their movement against them and to basically turn them into a human pretzel. Make movement difficult for them. And if you look at Stipe, well, obviously he's a wrestler, he's not a jiu-jitsu guy, but he had some control. Daniel Cormier too. And you look at a number of fights that happened, and you can see that the control level, the level of control there was the deciding factor in many fights. Cormier beat, do you remember Anthony Johnson? Mm-hmm. Now, Cormier beat Anthony Johnson from what we call a spiral position in a wrist ride. And obviously this control exists in wrestling too. It's not unique to jiu-jitsu, but the attacking the back with a spiral and a wrist ride, which is basically the guy's on all fours. He's on all fours, on elbows and knees. And the opponent, the person on top, say in this case Daniel Cormier, would be on the side, wrapping his arm around the waist and just teeing off on him. And that ability to control the turtle position, that all fours position, is key to victory there. That happened in this UFC last night too. So that is considered a TKO victory. So you think, it's striking, but it was the control of wrestling or jiu-jitsu that allowed that TKO to happen. Mm-hmm. So we say, TKO, it's punches, so it must be striking. No. It's not the Muay Thai guys who are doing this. It's the wrestlers and to some extent the jiu-jitsu guys who are doing it, who are using the body control, the understanding of body control to dominate and put a hurt on someone. Well, it could be a submission, could not. But we see that very often it's not. So Cormier won with the crucifix position, where he was lying on top and pinning the guy's arms and elbowing him. But that is wrestling. Even though it was striking, it's wrestling. It's MMA wrestling. And the same thing with the power half and Stipe. That was wrestling right there. Wrestling 101, even though using that power half to set up knees to the ribs and punches to the face, but it was wrestling and body control, which is really underappreciated. Mm-hmm. So the key to those two fights were the ability of one person to impose his will on another person's movement.
Yeah, he controlled the fight.
Yeah, and against the cage, and then that was just. I felt bad for Ngannou. He felt bad for him.
I did too. I don't know if he was. Did they push him into this fight too quickly because he came off a really big win, a very fantastic win with that uppercut, and he was the he's the next superstar. Did they push him too soon to go for this fight? I mean, he took it.
Yeah, for sure. I think he was not. I said this when they booked it. I said, there's no way. If Stipe fights smart, there's no way this guy can do it. But, MMA is an entertainment business. And,
of course.
And Ngannou is a big, scary black guy. And that racial element plays into it for sure. I mean, it's kind of gross, but, like the Mayweather-McGregor thing, there was a very ugly racial element there, but it sells tickets. That's why that fight was one of the most watched. And a guy like that, though, putting racial stuff aside, but a guy like that who punches so hard, it does make it exciting.
Yeah.
But when you have a tactical person ready to use intelligence and technique and strategy, brute force goes out the window. Mm-hmm. That being said, I was not a Ngannou fan until I actually really researched him. For the guy's been training 5 years. So people say 2. He's only been in the UFC 2, but he's actually been training for almost 5 years now. 3.5, 4 years. Almost 5 years. And the guy's striking is really good. Like, better than Daniel Cormier's. I mean, he's not just power. He has some very, very, very good technique, very clean technique. He's a really great athlete and dedicated and, like you said, nice guy. And I'm sure he'll be back. And
he'll fill out the gaps in his fighting, and he'll be a better fighter next time we see him.
He reminds me of Brock Lesnar, where Brock Lesnar was very, very one-dimensional. Brock Lesnar was a grappler who couldn't strike for crap. Mm-hmm. He's a striker who can't grapple for crap. But let's see. Unfortunately, Brock Lesnar never learned how to punch.
Let's hope he doesn't go the Brock Lesnar route.
I think Ngannou used to be homeless, and I think there's a general humility. That's why people like him. He's generally a humble guy, and humble people learn from their mistakes, and that's cool. Yeah, he'll be back.
I think he's got the hunger too. He's got a taste of UFC and that kind of thing, and he's not going to go back, kicking and screaming.
That definitely beats working at Home Depot, which is where he was a stock boy or something, Great. So, no disrespect to Home Depot. Obviously, every job is awesome, but when you're, that didn't mean that sounded like really disgusting. But
you're comparing, UFC heavyweight title champ.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you see what I'm saying, right?
People don't understand.
Yeah. Now, there's a couple other things I want to talk about in this fight. Is that okay?
Of course.
Or are we done?
We have 15 minutes left.
15 minutes. Okay. This is a real interesting fight. It was Shane Burgos versus Calvin Kattar. It was not like two kind of not so well known guys, but it was a really interesting technical war. And it was the Bellator was on last night too, and everyone was talking about Lima and McDonald, which turned out to be not really that technical. I mean, it was a good fight. It was fine, but it was not that interesting. And it was basically, two guys who were good at striking, kind of strike, but they didn't do anything really, really fascinating. Now, what I liked about this Burgos versus Kattar fight is Burgos is a guy who's very well trained, a boxer, obviously has good hands, but he's more of a body shot guy. He doesn't extend his reach. He's an infighter. Classic, like old school kind of Dempsey, Tyson infighting versus you're talking about Kattar, who's like an Ali outside, really movement. And it was a classic battle of jab versus body shot. And Burgos is going for the jab, the body shots, and he's trying to chip away at Kattar. But Kattar he keeps the most beautiful jab I've seen. Just ba-da, ba-da, ba-da. And he's just setting him up, distance management, and he's just avoiding, and just scientifically destroying him with pure efficiency. And that's that educated jab. And one of the great things I like to see is that the striking MMA over the last few years has really, really gone up. Now, the high-level striking has always been there. Cormier aside, I mean,
anti-Cormier. So.
No, I mean his striking is not that good. I mean, he's about power, but you look at the T.J. Dillashaw's and Dominic Cruz, they're really amazing. But the low-level guys were kind of crappy. They were like, there was the highs and the lows. Now the lows, even the guys you don't name, those guys, everybody's really skilled. The bottom has gone up, where you see this guy I'd never seen before. Cause I'm like, wow, that is a beautiful, educated jab. And pop, 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 pop. And then he sat him out. He was like, the footwork, Dominic Cruz was talking about this, the footwork was this bouncy into, it's a little bit like karate footwork, but it's boxing obviously, but it was like in and out, in and out, in and out. Pop, pop, 1-2 hits him. And then it was just great. The one thing that I didn't see, or I'd like to see a little bit more, was a little bit more angling, like the DJ Dillashaw's. Like, you see the way guys strike at 145 and 135 and 125 is not the way, is way far ahead of the heavyweights. The heavyweights don't switch stances as much. John Jones is the only exception where he switches stances quite often. But most of the guys don't switch stance, which is, kind of the thing in MMA now. And they don't angle as much as the lightweight class. But what I'm seeing is, I'm really interested to see the percolation of those lightweight striking theories into the heavier weights. And these guys weren't like, heavyweights. They were like, I think 155 or something like that. But maybe even 145. But I see the level of even the no-name guys just much higher. It's wonderful to see a really educated jab. And the one thing is, if you're a boxing aficionado, and I have some friends who are boxing aficionados, they're not big MMA fans, and they'll look at Cormier and they'll say, Cormier's striking sucks. And I can't really say it doesn't. Now, he's not a striker, he's a grappler, so it's a total game, you have to clinch and you have to do takedowns and you have to strike. And also MMA striking is different from traditional boxing. Like, it just is different because of the kicks and all that. But you can't look at Cormier's stance. I told you, he's kind of ugly in this, and you can't, there's certain fighters you look at and you're like, that just sucks. That sucks. Like, that sucks. And like old school Vanderlei Silva, it's like, it's powerful, but the guy sucks. You look at the up and coming guys in MMA, and I could show them to any boxing aficionado, and he'd be like, yeah, okay, those guys are good, whatever. Like, he'd have to admit it. You could look at this guy Qatar, and you'd be like, man, that guy can box. And his opponent Burgos, you're like, that guy can box. That's nice. That's good, clean, awesome technique. And it's nice to see that. It took a while for the real high level boxing and striking to make it in MMA. I think it's the last piece that's really going to evolve. Maybe not the last piece, but definitely a piece that needs to evolve further. And it is. And that educated jab, to see that pop, 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 is like watching, Ali dancing, chun, 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 chun. And it was exciting to see that level of clean technique. And my wife and I were looking at it, we're like, that's pretty cool. And then there was another fight, Rob Ford fought, and the same thing. He had some really nice striking and just ran a clinic, which was very different from the other fight. There was a Francimar Barroso, who's a Brazilian jiu-jitsu fighter, and I think he has some striking background, but he looked terrible. Total props, terrible distance management, terrible movement, just awful. Awful. I'm sure he's a very nice guy. I'm not trying to trash talk, but it was like, that's what I'm talking about when I'm saying I'm embarrassed. That like, how could this guy be on the stage and not be so technical?
Interesting.
And anyway, so those are my take on those fights. And in Bellator, Aaron Pico, the famous big prospect, Aaron Pico won again. And what did he win with? Beautiful striking and a body shot that was just crazy. So yeah, it's even in Bellator where it's sort of like, UFC light, or UFC crap usually, but but I hate Bellator. But even then you can see the levels going up.
What was the main event for Bellator? There was
McDonald and Lima and Rampage, and which I refuse to watch. I don't know what happened. Chael Sonnen versus Rampage. I don't know. I don't want to know.
Oh, Chael Sonnen. His podcast is not a good podcast. Sorry.
What is yes?
Yeah, you're learning a lot. It's like something about Chael Sonnen's thoughts or something. It's just him throwing up into a microphone for an hour about his stupid thoughts. And
I would rather shoot myself in the foot than listen to that.
Yeah, don't listen to Chael Sonnen's
And
podcast.
he's a convicted. He is a real estate fraud. So he's actually done some.
I didn't even know he was still fighting. I don't even want to know that. I apologize for even bringing it up to our listeners.
Rampage too. Like, guys got to go off into the sunset and
go make movies.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Go be Mr.
Rampage
T.
was in A-Team. He was actually
Mr. T,
he was pretty good. Yeah. You know,
I think he was in the Fast and Furious or something. One of those Furious. Furious 12. Who knows?
Furious 12.
Oh, God. All right. So the theme of this podcast is we hate Daniel Cormier. No, I'm just kidding. It was a great event. I am so happy to be back in the studio, sitting across from this man, listening to all the in-depth analysis that he brings to the table. I'm sitting over here just talking about the drama behind the scenes and spreading stories like a little girl. But this guy comes in here with the notes. He's ready to go. This is what you guys come here to listen to. You don't listen to me. You're listening to Rene Dreyfus. Coach Rene, Radical MMA.
Well, thank you very much. It's only a few people that I thought would listen to me, but it turns out that our podcast is pretty popular. You said it's number one on the...
Number one.
Yeah. So I want to thank all those listeners to listening to me. And today we were supposed to have a guest. Unfortunately, he couldn't make it, but I want to have, going forward, some content. We're back. We're going to have some really good historical content that a lot of you guys were clamoring for. I got a bunch of emails. And guys, feel free to email through the Facebook page.
Yeah.
Any content that you would like, especially the historical. I got tons of... people asking me about the links between the more traditional martial arts and the modern martial arts and what I can see as the commonalities or the disparate elements. And the other thing is we're going to have a great friend of mine, a physician, my training partner, on, and we're going to discuss nutrition and the MMA injuries and weight cutting and all these and the medical sides of this. And it's very interesting that we ran out of time. Could you have 2 more minutes?
Minute 30.
Yeah, minute 30. So one interesting thing is that, and I'm going to post the video. Guys, I want you to check the Facebook page. I'm going to post the video of the one shot that almost dropped Stipe. And it was Ngannou's shot, and Stipe blocked like a boxer. Now, where did Ngannou hit him? It was the same punch that hit Randy Couture. It hit him in the back of the neck. And I have a video of it that we took. I videoed it, and you can see it hits him in the lower medulla oblongata, pons area, right was the back of your brain, cerebellum, that area, which is a terrible place to get hit. But most boxing block like halfway up your head.
Yeah.
And Stipe almost lost that fight there. So it's interesting. We're going to talk about those issues, the neurological trauma, health issues, weight cutting, and I can't wait to have my friend on. And as I said, anybody has some content that they would like to ask us about, for sure.
Let us know what you want to hear, and we'll give it to you. All right, Rene.
Great to be back.
Thank you for coming into the studio. We'll see you guys next week on the Martial Culture Podcast.
Thanks for listening. Follow us on Twitter at Martial_Culture and on Instagram at MartialCultureCast. Please leave a review on iTunes, and we'll see you next time on the Martial Culture Podcast.